It's 3 after. You want to go ahead and get started, Leanne, and we'll.
Yeah, our other
I would-
two inspectors should be on shortly.
I would love to. Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, as I say, wherever you might be tuning in from. We're happy to have you guys here for our inspector chat, Q&A. I think Sherry might have some topics. But anyway, I just want to put out there that you are being recorded for blasting on the internet. No, I'm just kidding. You're being recorded for our video library, and we just have to have your approval. And if it's not okay, then I guess you can exit out the left stage. No, anyway, yeah, we found out recently we have to do that. So we have a lineup with our inspectors this evening: Tony, Chad, Rich. They'll be answering your questions. Oh, and I see we have Frank too.
Yes,
Hi,
we
Frank.
do.
So anyway, with that, I'm going to turn this over to our operations manager, Miss Sherry, and you can get started. Thanks, Sherry, and inspectors and everybody.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to tell you if there's things you want to talk to our inspectors about on these Thursday nights, please don't hesitate to let us know. You can either email me directly, email the info, or Leanne, either way, and it will get your questions answered by one of our inspectors. One of them is going to be knowledgeable on something. So I think Rich had something he wanted to bring up before we start on one of the topics that he wanted to discuss. So I'll let him start with that one.
I need a raise.
Sure.
That's a good way to
Talk
start
to
out.
the hand. Talk to the hand.
No. So, sorry about that. One thing that it's kind of sticking in my head since we've been doing this is for cavity insulation. We're seeing, I don't want to say a fair amount, but a handful of builders that use foam board insulation. In my experiences, when they're using the foam board insulation, the cavities are tight. They tend to either probably to undercut them, and even some spaces on the sides or the top or whatnot. And then also when they're cutting around electrical wires, electrical receptacle boxes, plumbing lines, there's a lot of voids. I'm not sure if which route to really go with this. If we should consider eliminating the use of foam board, or to have them start using spray and foam to fill in all the gaps. My concern with foam board, and even with using spray foam to fill in any gaps, is tiny houses move. You got movement from all different sides, all different angles, all different ways, and eventually that foam is going to either loosen up or the boards themselves, because there's really nothing holding them in place. They'll loosen up as well. So does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I have been having them fill in all the voids with spray foam. And most of the ones that I've done, they've already actually done that before I even, looked at it. But yeah, if they do foam board, they have to fill the voids. If not, the foam board's not going to be doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Why are they using foam board instead of fiberglass?
I don't know, because me, when I look at it, to me it's much more labor.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I forget who the builder is. I got one builder that that's all he wants to do is foam board.
Is it
And he
cheaper?
has, I don't know. I wouldn't think it would be, but I don't really know. Never priced it.
Yeah, I don't there. I mean, unless you have just access to it for a reason, but yeah, I don't know.
What is IRC? Will they allow you to use foam board in the walls?
There's nothing restricting it, so it can be used. I mean, I've never in all my time with the IRC seen anybody use it ever. Tiny
Yeah, in a
houses is the
standard
first
house,
time,
I've never seen it. Yeah,
Right.
but I know that in the tiny house though, like I said, I've got one builder, he just swears by it. He doesn't use anything else. And he does foam in every crack, every crevice, he foams them in. I mean, there's foam everywhere when I look at it.
Maybe he's allergic to insulation.
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Could be.
I know I hate working with it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one place that I think foam board would be good is on the wheel wells,
yes.
covering the wheel
Oh, yeah.
wells.
Yeah,
But I still think all the cracks should be foamed and everything, but we do require insulation on the wheel wells, and I can't imagine anything else other than having to build something and spray foam it in, or, you know, I think foam is probably the way to go on that.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But yeah, I don't, if it's not prohibited, I don't know that we can say, okay, we don't want it, but we certainly can
No.
hold them to the, you know, that it has to be all foamed in and everything, all the cracks and crevices, and like, to me, it's just not worth it. I wouldn't want to go through all the labor and
better.
cut everything around every wire and pipe, and it would just drive me bananas.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Saying it out loud, actually, I realized how dramatic it sounded, you know, so yeah, it makes sense now. All right. You talked me into it.
Well,
The drama
and-
queen. Everyone meet our drama queen.
well, and you might have to be careful about the R value that they're using in foam board
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because what is it, R5 per inch?
Per inch, yeah.
Yes.
So we'd need at least 3 inches to get
Right.
R15.
And that's what they usually, the ones that I've done, that's what they usually do. They have 3 inches in there.
Okay.
But does it get compressed, Tony?
Does it what?
Does it get compressed anywhere
No.
that they're,
No,
no?
no, yeah. Actually, they still have almost a 1/2 inch void when they're
Mhm.
done.
How
On
can you
facing.
see how can you see where they foam around the wires where they go through the top plate? Can you see that when they do foam board or?
Yeah,
Do you,
yeah. usually,
do
yeah.
you feel like it's okay when they seal those?
Well,
up?
with foam board, if they seal across the top of the foam board, that's sealing in that cavity anyway.
Okay. All right. Well, that was
Anybody
easy.
else? There was some questions that for clarification, do the sewer, gray water, waste pipes need to be connected during plumbing inspection?
Please, no.
Well, to answer, we have some of the builders don't do the plumbing under the house, don't finish the plumbing under the house. They only do stub downs for each of the drains. And they say because they're afraid of ground clearance and all. But what they do is they have the homeowner, whoever they deliver this to, whoever buys it, they have them complete the drain lines underneath the house and connect to the sewer. And most time they say that they're having once it gets out to the property, there's a plumber that will hook up everything and hook it to the sewer or septic system.
Well,
But
in
I have a
ANSI,
number of them that do that.
in ANSI 119.5, it says that if anything's to be done out in the field like that, it needs to be in the owner manual. So we might have to really make sure that these guys are putting out, they're supposed to be along with the house, giving an owner manual with how the house functions and, you know, the things that you have to do. If they've got to do something in the field, like there was one where the guy was going to be putting his mini split in out in the field, you know, really, and Tony and I talked about this, and we might want to talk about it now while we're on it. If they say, you know, the homeowner's going to put the mini split in there, do we need to require at least some kind of heat source in the house in order for us to pass it?
But you know, I think, like we had talked earlier, Robin, ANSI requires heat in the house, but like we have houses that we do in Hawaii where they don't put any heat or air conditioning in those homes because they say it's not required. They don't need them. So we're kind of like stuck there with that. Same thing with insulation. They don't, in Hawaii, they don't insulate the floors. So we don't really enforce insulating the floors there because it's something that's not required in Hawaii.
And it's gonna, but it's gonna be a hard, I mean, it's not gonna be easy to get those homes from Hawaii to anywhere else. So they're pretty much gonna stay
Right,
in Hawaii, so.
exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think Hawaii is our exception to the rules.
Yeah.
Said, but overall, as far as heat in the house, yeah, I do think we need to make it a standard or part, you know, make it part of what we're looking for in the standard.
And how much heat do they, I mean, obviously there's rules and regulations, but you know, if they put a 4-foot electric strip heater in there, is that going to take too much electricity for a 50 amp circuit? Do they have to put in some kind of, I mean, what are they going to use for heat? You know, all that's kind of rolling around in my brain, where a mini split's only going to pull 7.5 amps. You know, another type of heater, a propane heater, is going to be, you know, they got to have propane, and it's a sticky wicket when you think about it, but it is a requirement that every residence needs to have heat. Now, if it's, and as we're going forward here, guys, I think we're going to see a separation between RV and homes. I think we're going to see that these homes are going to be lived in full time, and these homes are going to be used for RVs and hotels and Airbnb. So there may be a separation between those two going forward as early as April.
Now there is these small, because some of the houses I've inspected, they have these small in-wall electric heaters, like one in the bathroom. They'll have one in the main portion of the house. I don't know what amperage they actually pull, but they're small. I could look into it and see what amperage they actually pull, but I know that I have inspected some of the houses that have them in there where they didn't have a mini split on the house. They just had these. Normally, it's just two of them, one in the bathroom and one in the main living area.
Yeah, and with hot air rising, the loft would be fine. The only thing that I would be concerned about is the amperage and oh, I know what it was. They get a plug-in resistance heater, and they say, "Oh, that's my heat." It has to be built
Yeah,
in.
no, yeah, it has to be part of the unit. It can't be a plug-in where it's removable or portable.
Okay. All right. You know, all of these things, are we adding these things into our NOAA Plus standard? We probably should, Sherry, as we talk about these. These are things that are in the ANSI standard and in IRC, that heat has to, it's crazy. Heat has to be in the house, but air conditioning doesn't.
Wow.
Right. So, you know, I think we could easily require a primary heat source.
Oh, yeah.
I don't necessarily think we can spec what type, but we should be able to require a primary heat source because I think ANSI requires that.
Yes, it does. ANSI does, and so does IRC, and it says it has to
Yeah.
keep a certain ambient temperature of, I don't know, Rich, you probably know it, I don't know it, or Chad, you might.
68 degrees
Yeah, 6
for all habitable rooms.
3 foot from the ground. Yep.
There you go. There you go. And that's.
We
and
have a
that's
question
what the-
from Nancy. May I ask it? May I have permission?
Sure.
Does ANSI specifically say anything about the required recommended heat source types?
No. Not that I
No.
know of at all.
Okay. Thanks for your question,
No, because
Nancy.
we have builders using mini wood stoves
Mhm,
in the
Yeah.
units as a heat
Right.
source.
Right.
mhm.
The
Fireplace.
possibility- Oh,
But one thing they cannot do is use their range for heat. That's
Oh,
not,
yeah. Right.
that's not gonna be acceptable.
so not like grandma's house.
That's the way we used to do it. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. You know it. And then we put a boiling water on there to keep the moisture up too, you know, so.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. All right, go ahead, Sherry.
Absolutely. And just as we were talking last week, I wanted to reiterate that we're gonna require that there be electricity of some sort hooked up for our stage 5s. Because our inspectors are gonna start requiring to make sure things are working, such as mini splits and lights and GFCIs and all that kind of stuff. So just as an FYI, we want to make sure we're getting that out to everyone that we are going to start requiring electricity be hooked up of some sort. It can be by generator or it can be however, but we do want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
How about water?
That's a good question, actually. I will let one of the inspectors answer that one.
I
Do we
think
need
that,
water hooked up to it for a final?
I don't know. I thought about that because we had talked about it before and I
Right.
thought about it and I thought, well, the only thing we're going to be able to see is if they turn the faucet on and water comes out of it. But what about, we won't be able to really see if there's something leaking behind the wall or especially if it's in a shower,
Right.
the controls and so forth. So I don't know how beneficial it is because we do 80-pound air pressure test on the house ahead of time.
Okay, I mean, it's up to you guys. And the only thing I was thinking about was if you had electricity, you could turn the hot water heater on and make sure that they had the hot and the cold in the right place. Because sometimes, you've ever seen them put the hot on the cold side and the cold on the hot side?
Yep.
I'll tell you a
All the
story.
time.
I'll tell you a story about that. I did a thing building out at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, and there was this the boys' bathroom, I guess you want to call it, or the men's bathroom. The urinals, when you flushed them, hot water came out
Yeah,
because somebody messed up.
yeah.
Well, it was in Dover, Delaware, okay?
Yeah, it was Dover. Yeah.
Well, along those same
Goodness.
lines, Along those same lines-
They're sanitizing these things. This is pretty cool.
it's sterilized.
There you go.
Along the same lines, what about propane? Do they need propane tanks hooked up and light the stove and light their heater? And are we going to check stuff like that? Or
I think that's really should be, I think it's beyond our scope, really. I don't know. What do you think, Rich?
Me personally, I would love to see it. I would love to see the whole unit operational. But it has to be consensus for everybody. Now we got to realize, even if we have water and hot water, I mean, unless it's turned up pretty good, we may not see hot water.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Now-
not only that, but how many do you actually see that has the propane tank there?
Yeah.
We don't see that many that even has a propane tank. I see they have the connection for the propane, but it's not often that I ever see that they actually have the tanks there.
Yeah, but I think if they have, if they are building and using propane, they could just have one tank. And I mean, they're gonna send the house out unit with it, the unit out with a tank on it. So I personally think it's another, if we're gonna go through the testing, I think we should test the entire house as best we can with everything. That's just my vote anyway.
Ed,
Yeah,
do you-
Might be a difference.
Yeah, even if they just have a temporary, tank set up where they can hook up to it just for the inspection. That would make sure everything's operational. Water, same deal, electric definitely.
yeah, because the water,
be
we
wo-
wouldn't need, they can hook a garden hose up to it.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
not a big
that,
thing.
I guess, we sustain at that point.
And, and also just while we're talking about this, we're not going to be requiring all this at one time, that just because we're talking about it, we will lead up to it and give time for all of this to happen so that we're not bombarding everyone with new guidelines that they're going to have to. There you go. So
Yeah.
we
Does
will give.
Does January 1st sound like a good time?
I that was my thoughts. I was thinking January 1st, and we would send out emails and text messages.
Yeah.
And so that it's leading up to it on a weekly basis, just so that everybody is aware. If you don't look at your emails really a lot at a time, then at least most people have their phones with them and can get the text messages. So January 1 seems like the consensus, most of everything we've talked about. So I would say a yes to that.
And I would send out an email as soon as you possibly can saying these are
Yes,
what we're considering. So they have plenty of time, and then also tell them about the Thursday meetings in case they want to come on and say, I don't
Absolutely.
like that, or this is why I don't like it, and this is why it won't work, or, we want to get their feedback before we implement if we can.
absolutely. Another thing that we were asked recently is concerning the thermal breaks. They wanted to know if it was sufficient to just use underlayment prior to the actual flooring, or is there a better way?
No,
Yeah, I don't, yep, nope.
yeah.
I will allow ice and water shield.
Yeah. But see,
As
the
a
thing
thermal
is,
break?
yeah, and the difference between those two is the ice and water shield won't rot, but the underlayment will.
If they use ice and water shield, should they use pressure treated 3/4 inch plywood?
I
No,
mean, for their floor, subfloor?
No,
No.
if they're going to use ice and water, are they going to put that on top of the plywood?
No, that would go on top of the steel frame.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah.
got you. All right. No, that's not, I wasn't envisioning, I was envisioning
Which,
something else.
Sherry, were you meaning the 1/4 inch Luan underlayment?
It just says there is a requirement to provide thermal breaks. Is it sufficient to do just an underlayment prior to the actual flooring, or is there a better way? That was the question.
Yeah, I wonder
So
if he's
I'm
talking about-
assuming it's our new thermal break that we implemented back in September.
Yeah, so, the two things though, that the thermal break, what we're talking about it, is one is not only just a thermal break, but the other thing is that we're not getting that cold and warm to create moisture between that steel and the wood to create rot. So, if they're talking about some type of underlayment that's not rot, or that's not wood, then we can look at that.
Well, this was something that was sent in by one of our guys as a suggestion. Can you guys see that?
Yeah,
Chassis.
and that's okay because he's using sill seal between the steel frame and that 3/4 inch wood. So, what we're trying to avoid is steel touching the wood. That's what we're trying to avoid. And I don't see any problem with what he wants. If he wants to go that extra mile, I see no problem with that.
Yeah, same.
Okay, yeah, and Chad, if you can't see this, basically they're taking a 3/4 inch piece of wood and putting on top of the sill seal. They have the metal, then the sill seal, and then a 3/4 inch wood to have an additional thermal break, and then the 3/4 inch subfloor on top of that.
Gotcha.
So instead of using what did we say, foam board, rigid foam
Foam.
board,
Yeah.
you would be using just regular wood, which would add a little bit more insulation value and everything to it.
But the advantage to what he's got there versus the foam board is we don't have to worry about compression when this thing moves down the road, but up and down. So you don't have to worry about the compression on it.
All right.
Yeah, foam board would break down.
I want to talk a little bit about egress and the pop-out windows. Do pop-out windows make good egress windows, or do they fall out easily during transport?
If they're installed properly, they shouldn't fall out at all. They're
Right.
used a lot of times, or many times on RVs that we know are traveling a lot.
Right.
So if they're installed properly, they should not fall out during transport.
Are pop-out windows double insulated? Do they have a U value, or are they single strength?
And I think you can get them both ways.
Okay, because I know in RVs, they don't have a U value requirement. Yeah, I've got some things too to talk about too, Sherry. once you
Okay,
get done with it.
you go right ahead.
I didn't want
I'll
to,
let you have it.
oh, okay, all right. I wanted to talk about the testing that's required, dielectric, pressure tests, deflection tests, and the labels that, we want to have a little discussion about. Number one, dielectric. Tony, you want to kind of lead us in on that one?
Yeah, Richard and I think Sherry too, we had discussed the dielectric test as far as need goes. And these homes, as Richard had talked to me about, that these homes are being inspected as a standard home, as we would do a standard home, the wiring wise. And we don't see a need for the dielectric test. First, I don't think the values we get back are always accurate to start out with. The builders don't have any knowledge really how to perform these tests. We have to kind of train them for it. The other problem is that there's, I don't know how many different kinds of manufacturer testers that are out there. There's so many of them, and they function differently. And we can't, all of us don't know all the functions of those testers. we just don't find any value in those tests at all. And if we're going to be doing, requiring these homes to be hooked up with electricity so we can test everything, I think that really should be more than sufficient for what we're doing. The other thing is, we have DIYers that we're having to make them go out and buy a tester because no, most 90%, 99% electricians don't have these. They don't use them because they're not used on regular house wiring. And I think the intent of the code on these was really for these manufacturers that have a production line and they're producing RVs on their production line. And I think that was really the intent of it, which is what really is not how we're looking at tiny houses being done. So that was our feeling on it, that this test is not, it's not really giving us anything. So why have them do it?
And the other concern, I think you mentioned, Tony, was that they weren't doing it correctly. Some of them leaving it
Well,
on.
that's the thing,
one
they're
second.
not.
They were
Yeah.
leaving it on for 60 seconds and then they're doing damage to the wiring at that point.
Exactly, right. Exactly. Yeah, we
So-
looked at one, I think I just looked at one, I think it was either yesterday or today, where they said duration of the test was 60 seconds
It
per
was
circuit.
today.
Was it today? So
Mhm.
60 seconds per circuit, you can actually start to do damage to that, even though there's no amperage on there, you can start to do damage to that insulation. The insulation is only rated for 600 volts, and we're applying 1,000. The code requires, the code says for 1 second, but can you imagine these guys are putting it on for 60 seconds? So it's doing more damage than good.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing is, I kind of feel like if we're doing a rough electrical inspection, then, okay, I can see not doing the dielectric tests. But if we're doing a as-built where we're not inspecting the rough electric, maybe that would be a good place to use it.
I agree with that one. I mean, taking it out of the new build from the ground up, because we're seeing everything, we're verifying everything. But the units that come in as built, everything's closed up.
Oh, yeah, and they can't.
And
do it. And they
you have
can't.
no idea what's going on. So it may be beneficial for as built only, but not for new ones.
And
Yeah, but
then
even
the
for
other
as-built-
thing is, all we're asking for is a report on a piece of paper. And those
Yeah.
can be easily fudged and made up,
Yes.
Well, the other thing is. with the
They figure
as-built-
out what a good reading is, and then we don't know. They'll just put the readings down. I mean,
That's exactly right. And then the other thing is with the as-built, they'd have to go through and disconnect all their lights.
everything, yeah.
Anything that's electronic. And I had one builder who had forgot that a couple of his outlets had the USB chargers built into them.
Oh, no.
And he damaged one of the outlets. He had to replace that. So we're going to run into these kind of things. And I just think that what we're getting back from it is really not useful.
What are we
And I
testing
just-
for with the dielectric test?
We're testing for the resistance. What we're looking for, if there's a weakness in the insulation on the
Like a
circuit.
short?
Well, not necessarily even a short. A short, yes, of course, but just even weakness. If there's you drive a staple too tight and maybe the insulation on the hot leg is kind of compromised, with 1,000 volts, she'll jump to that ground, to the ground wire, and then you'll be able to see that on the meter. But in most cases, the builder's not even going to know what that's even telling them.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it's.
Yeah. And then the other
I don't
thing is,
really
if
see a
we,
use for it.
if we start requiring power on the units, at least we're gonna see that they are functioning
Right.
properly. So that's
Right.
another big plus.
Yeah, and I think that taking the place of the dielectric, I think we'll get more honest answers, whether, well,
Yeah.
does this work and does that work? And
And the other thing you want to consider is that's actually written in the RV code to do that test. And if you've ever examined an RV and looked at the wiring is not all the same type of wiring that we use in a regular house wiring. Some of it is much inferior to that. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why their outlets even are what I consider to be inferior to a standard home outlet. So I think that's one of the reasons why. And we do re-verify that they're doing in their outlet boxes, that they're doing the ground wires properly, so that we know that the system is grounded properly.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? One of the tonight's attendees, Ron, he brings up a really valid point. He says the modular industry, because not all homes on the line are visited by an inspector. This provides assurance in the quality of the build in the absence of an inspector. So I think that was well put.
Yeah.
Okay, and Leanne,
Thanks,
was that,
Rich. Yes,
that-
I
that
was
was
trying to
good
get a
to-
word in.
I
Hard
think
to get a
Catherine
word
was
in
trying,
with you guys. I was going to
Catherine was
read
trying to
Ron's
get a word in
comments.
too.
All right. All right, plumbing tests. We talked about that once before. Do we want to do it on the rough end, on the final? Does it matter? Pressure test, 80 pounds. Do we want to have a 10-foot vent pipe full of water for the wastewater test? Where are we with those tests?
I thought we decided last week that pressure test would be okay for a stage 5, but we would still do it as a stage 3 for the rough end, because if it's going to leak, then they'll know ahead of time.
So it's recommended for stage 3, but we'll do it on stage 5, or they have to do it on stage 3.
Some of the builders,
That's up to the inspectors.
some of the builders, the way they build is a portion of their lines are on the interior. So there's no way that they could perform at stage 3. So then we'd be forcing them to change how they're doing their units, and it would be pretty dramatic on their end. So I mean, bulk majority of people, yes, stage 3 is the time we're going to test it at Ruffin, but for the slim few, stage 5 will still work for us.
And the other thing is, and you're right, Rich. The other thing is, maybe we might want to require it for both of those 2 stages. And the reason I say that is, during stage 3, it's beneficial to the builder, because if he's got a leak, we're going to know it. He's going to know it there. But on stage 5, he's got all of his faucets installed, everything is installed, and if he's got a leak, then we're going to know it too. So it might even be beneficial for both stages.
Yeah, that might be a little cumbersome though. I mean, at the if he's got water pressure on the unit, and he's got a leak outside of the walls, he can easily fix those leaks if he finds one. If it's inside the walls, it's a little more difficult to do a repair.
But that's why I said it might be beneficial to do both stages, to have it done. In case, well, one is, what if they're in an area where they don't have any, which I've come across those, where they don't have any water, but they do have air. So on stage 5, well, they may not be able to test all the seals and everything with water, but with air, we'd be able to check it.
Yeah, I think what we should do is keep it as a requirement for stage 3, and on the off chance or the slim occurrence, then we just make a note on our stage 3 that it wasn't tested and it has to be tested at final or a pre-final before they have all the traps in and everything else.
Can we say
just
that they either have to have water pressure on or air pressure on the final? Could we do something like that? They don't have to have, I mean, in other words, we're talking about they have to have electric on. Are we saying they also have to have a water hose hooked up with water pressure on the water lines?
I mean,
I
that's
would
what
And
we're
if they
think
don't,
one or the other.
yeah, and if they don't have water available, will they be allowed to put air pressure on it?
Air pressure is going to show us more, I think, than what water pressure is going to show us. The water pressure, most water pressure they're going to be able to get on the line usually is 60 pounds. And we always require 80 on the lines. So if for whatever reason they don't have water available and they can use air pressure, I think that's going to, I think we'd see air pressure go down quicker than we would see water leak.
Are we saying air pressure for stage 5?
Yes. Yeah, we're saying that on stage 5, we want electric and we want water and we want the propane
Propane.
hooked up, everything hooked up. But what if they don't have water? Can they use air?
So I see an issue with that, because if we're testing, all right, so say we have a typical unit and we're testing it at stage 3, we're testing the drain system, we're testing the water system with air or water, which more than times than not, it's air on both. I don't want to go back and retest I don't see any point or any gain in retesting the unit at final. You know what I mean? Because
The only advantage I see is at that point, they would have fixtures installed, and this would tell us if there's a leak between
Right, that's what I
the-
was talking about, yeah.
plumbing and the fixtures.
yeah, I know what you're saying there, but yeah, I guess we could. Yeah.
Well, what I'm talking about is they either have to have water pressure on or they have to have air pressure. They don't necessarily have to have 80 pounds of air pressure, I would say. But, if you have air, if you have a tester, I don't even know if you have to have it tested. But if you have water and you turn on the faucet and it runs, and a lot of times the plumber will check things. When they install things, they check for drain leaks under the kitchen sinks and under the bathroom sinks there. They usually fill up bathroom sink up with water and then pull the plunger and let it drain out. It's really up to them. Usually the inspector doesn't check those things. It's the plumber that checks those. But if we are going to require them to have water on at the final, so we can turn on the faucet and make sure that it runs and check for hot and cold or anything like that, will it be okay if they don't have water for air? That's my question.
I don't necessarily think we're going to be able to check for hot and cold.
Well, we could.
Um,
No,
yeah, I think-
no, we could. But yeah, you're right, Robin. I get it. I agree. Air at final, maybe something like 50, 60 pounds, and leave it at that.
I mean,
I think
why don't you think we could check for hot and cold, Tony?
they'd have to fire up their hot water heaters, and some of them have electric hot water heaters. So they'd have to
No,
fire them up. And
What the inspectors do is they go over and turn off the water from the water heater, and then they go turn on the hot water.
I
And
see
if
what you're
water
saying,
comes
yeah.
out, then it's
yeah, you
it's
could do
hooked up
that.
wrong.
Yeah.
And I think we should let the other builders that are listening in on this to understand why we're kind of looking at this. Is in the past we've had some homeowners call and complain and say, I have a seal on my house, but my kitchen faucet around the stem is leaking, or the shower head, the shower head is leaking. Well, that's things that we don't check for because that's not part of code. So what we're trying to do is come up with some idea where maybe we can catch some of that ahead of time. Am I kind of right on that, Robin?
Yes. Yes, you are, Tony.
All right. Not the last thing, but almost the last on the testing part anyway. Deflection. You know, there are some tests that we're supposed to do on our, in the ANSI standard. I was thinking about that, Tony, and I said, you know, we use, the way we do that is we use the span tables. That span tables say you can use 2x6s for, you know, 50-pound snow load on a roof. I think that's more than sufficient than having to actually go test each item for deflection. I think that would be more, you know, like you said, in a factory where they're producing a lot of RVs and they don't use the standard material for the roofs and stuff like that they test for deflection. The last one would be on the testing anyway, is the labels. I'm thinking that if it's an RV, it probably should have labels on it. If it's a home, maybe just the exit window, egress window, and the electric service hookup amperage. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, that's what we talked about today. I agree. I think the voltage that should be definitely displayed. And I think we had said before, though, if it's a regular, if they're going to live in it as their house, we don't really see that big of a reason to have exit on their egress. But if it's going to be like a bed and breakfast or so, then it should have the exit for the egress.
Yeah, I'm thinking if it's an RV, if it's going to be a bed and breakfast, or it's going to be an Airbnb, that the labels about, you know, curtains should be pulled back when it's close to a stove. You know, they have all those kind of labels
Right.
that they probably should have. Propane should be, you know, there's a lot of propane labels. So if it's used for an Airbnb or an RV, I would say fully labeled. If it's just a home, just an egress and an amperage hookup on the electric.
Yeah, I had said bed and breakfast. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I'm hungry. But you're right. Airbnb. is
Tony's
what I was
hungry.
thinking. Yeah.
All right. Next on my list, all
And
smoke
somebody drinking
detectors.
coffee over here that smells so darn good.
All smoke detectors and fire extinguishers and safety equipment needs to be installed at the final inspection. We can't
Yes.
let them say, hey, I got a fire extinguisher, I got a smoke detector, but I haven't put it up yet, you know, I'll put it up, you know, that kind of a thing. So
What if they have the, just not the unit installed on a smoke detector, but the case is there? No?
the whole
no,
thing-
because then you can't just check the interconnection. Usually what they do is they push the button and see if all the smoke detectors go off.
Right. Yep.
All right,
Sticking up there, you know.
what things can we do re-inspects? What things can we use photos for and what things cannot we use photos for? One of the things I was thinking about was we can't use photos for the pressure test on the plumbing. That needs to be a 10-minute hold, and a photograph wouldn't work for that. But if you need a fire extinguisher mounted 2 feet from the front door, I think a photo would work with that.
Right, because we can
what do you
compare
guys
that
think about
photo to the other pictures to know that the thing is with the pressure test, you're right, Robin, because the pressure test, we're only seeing a gauge. So we're not really seeing the house or anything like that. It could be a gauge from 2 other houses. So you're absolutely right. And the fire extinguisher, picture wise, we can compare it to what we've already inspected, so we can see that stairway or that whatever's next to it, it belongs to that.
And just as an FYI, we are now starting to require for any photos that the VIN number be photoed as well,
Right.
photographed as well, to be sent in with the photograph that was requested by the inspector.
Now, we're not
So
saying that any of you
that's-
builders would cheat, but
No,
just trying to cover everything.
it's just
No,
our
no.
way of making sure it gets to the right file, basically. And because a lot of times I'll get a photograph and it will be just a whatever, and it'll be somebody's name that I've never seen before. And I'm sitting here going, okay, where does this go? What inspector gets this? Or,
Yeah.
what VIN number does this go to? So a lot of it's for that. But
All right,
other than that,
Next, I had written down, and we talked a little bit about this, was the manufacturer's manual, owner's manual. Are we gonna start asking for that? Things like, if they have water pipes that go underneath of the trailer, and they're gonna require the homeowner to put insulated skirting around it in order to, so it doesn't freeze, or insulate the pipes, or do something. Do we want that manufacturer's manual to have that? Number one, to have a manufacturer's manual, which I think a lot of them don't have, but an owner's manual of how to do stuff that they need to do. In other words, it's required in ANSI. It's not required in a home, but I think it's a good idea in some cases that the homeowner may not know something that needs to be communicated to the homeowner.
And the only thing I've been checking for on them is that the manuals for all the equipment, the operating manuals and so forth for all the equipment be present with the house.
Yeah, that's all I would ever check for myself, is just manufacturer's literature. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm just saying, if there is something like that, like I just said, because guys, if you can stay on a little bit for a debriefing after the meeting, I have a couple of things we wanted to talk about. I see Catherine with her hand up too.
I just was gonna say, I think it just depends on if it's a fixed or a though. If it's gonna be put on a foundation with everything in the ground or what, however, that should be done at that inspection. On a though, it might change hands in just a matter of a few months, or, those people might need to know that the pipes went down that way. So I think that would be more important, is just, it depends on if it's going a movable version.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a separating of RVs from homes coming pretty soon here. These houses are going to be RVs, and this house is going to be a home. Tony, tell us about the trailer inspection you did today.
Which one?
The one with the one that's a park model that had the wood framing that could possibly lift it off.
Yeah, so I did one today that the trailer was 11 foot 6 inches wide, and it was 36 feet long.
34,
And
anyway, 400 square
34.
feet.
Yeah, it was just under 400. And anyway, what they did was they framed on top of the trailer with 2x8s and created a floor frame. And they bolted it to the trailer frame in such a way that if the home wanted to be removed from the trailer, it was just a matter of unbolting it, and then the home could be the trailer be pulled out and the home put on a permanent foundation. And Robin was saying that if we see that type of case, that maybe that should be IRC inspected versus the ANSI inspection.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. 100%.
Okay, good.
Even though it was on a trailer that was on wheels, when we're seeing it, it's on a trailer that's on wheels, but he bolted it in such a way that it could be removed if it needed to be.
Yeah, so I mean, really the only difference with the IRC would be the egress.
Egress, right.
So, okay.
Yeah, okay, we're in agreement with that. Good. Like I said, I'm going to start seeing, I think, a separation of this is an RV, this is a home. I think we're going to be seeing more and more of that. And do we inspect caulking?
Caulking for what?
Or where though?
I mean-
What-
Exterior caulking. Around the windows, do we inspect any caulking around the windows? Do we inspect caulking around the wheel wells? Do we inspect caulking? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't necessarily inspect caulking, but I think we all inspect whether or not the windows are sealed in properly from the outside, and that that they do have their flashing, and then on the inside, we inspect that they are sealed between the window and the wood frame.
Mm.
Now, some use caulking, majority of them use spray foam.
Okay. All right. All right. Last thing, what is not needed for a final? I mean, exterior paint, caulking, interior paint, flooring, what's not needed? Appliances?
Well,
I would say paint, trim, carpet, but the bathroom has to have proper flooring. And
What about
That would be-
cabinets? What about kitchen cabinets?
I don't see a need. The only way I see a need for it is at the base and anything that supports an appliance, a permanent appliance,
Yeah,
like a
like,
Sure.
like if you have a stove and you have a, over the stove microwave, that cabinet needs to be in with the microwave. Is that what you're saying? And also if there's a sink, it would have to have at least a base cabinet with a sink in it.
Yeah,
but everything else would have to be.
So let me ask you a question. If you're getting ready to do a final and it's not move-in ready, it's not, would you still pass it?
No,
If,
well, with the exception of those,
right, I was
those
gonna say, it depends.
paint, trim, carpet. Other than that, I'm fine with inspecting it without those items, but anything more than that, no, we couldn't give it a
What
final.
about closet shelves? What about closet shelves or closet doors or bedroom doors?
See,
No,
we
we
don't
don't
have
need
any
that.
governor, we can't govern over that, so I don't see
No, it's not in the
why
code.
that would be required.
Chad, what did you say?
I said, if it's not in the code, I'm not inspecting it. I mean, I don't
Right,
inspect
that's-
cosmetics, so.
That's,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
right.
All right. Well, that's good. That's good to know. Just so we're all on the same page. That's what I'm trying to say.
And see, and Chad's 100% right, and that's what we tried to get across at one of the other meetings, is that, we are basically, I mean, if you think about it, we're simply code enforcers, and we're not quality control. So if, a shelf's not in or something like that, we have no jurisdiction over that. So there's not really much we can say. If the outside of the house isn't painted, that's not a violation of anything. So we can't really say much about that.
Yeah, unless it's like, I know that on a lot of houses, there is a wheel well, and then they build on top of that wheel well, and that needs to be sealed up in some way to keep water intrusion from going into the house.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make sense.
So,
anybody else have anything else?
that's it. I'm done.
I have,
Tab?
Nancy had asked a comment kind of question, when we were talking about leaks and faucets. If a leak is found at the final, it is a non-invasive issue to rectify because it is an issue with the faucet, which is easy to get to, right?
Yep. Agree.
Yep. Yep.
Alrighty then.
Okay.
All right.
Does any of the inspectors have anything they want to add or?
No.
Huh?
All right.
All right. Jordan, if you
Alright,
could
we're
send
good.
out Jordan, if you could send out a debrief link, I'd like to chat with the inspectors on something offline, and Leanne, I guess you can take it out
All
from
right.
there.
Well, guys, I've enjoyed this time with all of you. I hope we got your questions answered. Bring some questions next week. Anyway, this winds down our week of Tiny Talks workshop. We will see you Monday, and we're going to have one of our schoolie builders that does just school buses. So that'll be really cool. We haven't had one of those yet. So you guys tune in Monday, and we'll look forward to seeing you. Hope you have a great day tomorrow and a wonderful weekend. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one. Thank you so much,
Guys.
Bye,
inspectors,
everyone.
everybody, for tuning in. Bye.